One legal opinion that had ramifications that nobody could see. But that opinion begins something even larger than we can imagine. You see, Jim Crow did not arrive as one law. It arrived as 1,000 different procedures: rail cars, schools, public accommodations, voting restrictions, uh, polling exclusion. Just a multitude of things came from that decision that had so many consequences that no one could really see it. The danger today is not that history repeats in that same form. No, it's not uniform. The danger is that it repeats through the same protocols, the same processes, the same patterns. Legal permission, state action, diminished power, you name it, it impacts you each and every day. And that's why today's show is going to be so important, because we want to look at Montgomery. For decades, Black Americans fought in courts, petitioned, lawsuits, appeals, you name it, it happened. Then Montgomery changed that strategy. What if instead of asking for justice, you withdrew your economic value? What if people who fund the system stop participating in it? That's because that's what happened in the Montgomery bus boycott. 381 days.
Tell me about the purpose behind this out of bounds campaign and what exactly it is.
The Out of Bounds campaign is more than about sports. It's about power, ownership, and accountability. We understand that Black athletes have helped build college athletics.
Economic power becomes political power. That's right. The politics of economics. And that's so important. So this brings us to the SEC. Now let's move forward to 2026. The SEC alone distributes more than $1 billion to its member schools. That's right. According to records, last year, $1 billion. Now, when you add television, tickets, sponsorships, paraphernalia, all type of merchandise, licensing, when you add parking, when you add all of these things to the equation. Oh yeah, concessions too. That's an important one. These athletic departments receive over $3 billion in economics annually. That's a lot of money. Think about that. Think about the impact of $3 billion, not generated on Wall Street, generated by sports, generated by athletes, generated by fans, generated by participation. That's the impact. And so the question for you and I today, who creates that value? Who benefits from that value? Who controls that value? That's key. That's what we need to look at. And that's why it's so important. So the NAACP's question, the NAACP's out of bound initiative is built around the idea: no representation, no recruitment, no revenue. Now, supporters will argue, if states benefit economically from Black athletic participation while simultaneously weakening Black political representation, then economic leverage becomes a legitimate response. That's right. Now, now you got to get the other side. Critics argue young athletes should not bear the burden of political protests. I'll remind you that Dr. King was 26 years old when the Montgomery boycott happened. So, is it a fair question? Yes, it is. And it's so key and it's so important, Kenzie, that former athletes, commentators, and journalists, all those people participated. So why should an 18-year-old quarterback carry the weight of the political movement? That question does deserve an answer. It does deserve an answer. It's not frivolous. I want to show you a couple of things that may allow you to rethink this. See, athletes has always been central to the civil rights struggle. Yes, they have. But the burden shouldn't just fall on athletes. It should fall on fans, alumni, donors, everybody should be actively involved in this. And that's why it's so important. See, consumers make a difference. And these universities can be impacted and the responsibilities can be shared. Now, in this debate, we oftentimes forget history. That's right. We oftentimes forget history. And we oftentimes don't realize that let's pause there for a minute. Mike, do this. Let's play that first video, um, and let's set the stage for this so we can see the significance of it. Let's play that first video.
Tell me about the purpose behind this out of bounds campaign and what exactly it is.
The Out of Bounds campaign is more than about sports. It's about power, ownership, and accountability. We understand that Black athletes have helped build college athletics into a multi-billion-dollar industry, especially as we talk about football and basketball in this case. But so many of those same states benefiting from Black talent are actively working to weaken Black political representation and power. And we're in a moment now where we are looking at these universities and they are being very silent and complacent. And I think the call is if universities cannot continue to profit, if universities continue to profit from Black talent, celebrate Black future and all these things, these institutions must also speak up. They have the responsibility to publicly defend them on and off the field. Silence is not neutrality. It is complicity. It is being complacent, and we are calling on our universities to move beyond statements and stand accountable to the very communities that help sustain their campuses and their athletic programs.
Are there a list of items in this campaign that you are asking of student athletes to follow through with?
One of them was Black athletes and recruits are asked to withhold their commitments from targeted programs and to seriously consider historically Black colleges and universities. Fans, alumni, and donors to stop purchasing tickets, merchandise, and licensed apparel from these targeted programs, and to redirect that spending to historically Black colleges, universities, their athletic programs, scholarships, funds, NIL collectives, our bands and alumni foundations.
Are you encouraging these young students, athletes to go to the HBCUs?
Absolutely. Historically Black colleges being number one. We're always encouraging students to check out historically Black colleges, universities, but there are plenty of other universities and colleges and great athletic programs in other states that believe in protecting democracy and fair representation. And so if it looks like going to other universities that withholds those moral groundings, yes, we encourage students to go to those universities and those athletic programs. But in particular, of course, we always want to uplift the great work of historically Black colleges and universities, encourage the proper funding for these universities. If we take our talent to these places, undeniably that funding and backing will come with where our talent goes.
Tell me about the purpose behind this out of bounds campaign and what exactly it is.
The Out of Bounds campaign is more than about sports. It's about power, ownership, and accountability.
Okay. Now, you got an idea of the out of bound program. Now, let's clarify. And because we started about asking the question, should young athletes participate in this initiative? There's an interesting book that's written by Taylor Branch. It's called America in the King Years. Yes. Taylor Branch did a 3-volume assessment of the civil rights movement in the Montgomery boycott. And what he basically was able to establish, and this is why this is very important. You see, people like me don't lead movements. Now, 30 years ago, I could have probably led this movement. Because 30 years ago, I wasn't institutionalized. And that's what Taylor Branch shows in his book. That at a certain point in life, you become institutionalized. Pastor, what do you mean by that? You learn how to work the institution to your advantage. And even all of the flaws in the system, you learn how to work it. So what Taylor Branch did is that he analyzed the civil rights movement going all the way back. And he found that the integral part of the civil rights movement, and that was an economic movement, and most people don't see it as an economic movement. Ask the Alabama commissioners in the 1950s, was it economic? And what Taylor Branch showed is that he showed that young college students, Diane Nash, people of that ilk, led the civil rights movement. That's right. They led the sit-ins. They led the boycotts. When the elders were saying, you can't do it, they said, we're going to continue. If you look at the historic film and you analyze Taylor Branch's 3 books, you see that young people have always been on the forefront. You see, when we decided to change the politics and economics in Jefferson Parish 30 years ago, we went against the elders. They told us you couldn't do it that way. They told us you didn't have that kind of power. But we were willing to commit everything because it didn't matter. You didn't have anyway. And so when you become institutionalized, you got to think about the congregation, the impact on them. You got to think about your endorsements. You got to think about your donations. All those things come into play. Oftentimes when you're 25, 30 years old, those things don't matter to you. You're willing to take risks. You're willing to be initiative. You're willing to think out of the box. And so what Tyler Branch establishes, that all the critics who are saying boycotting the SEC may be a novel activity and it will not work, they said the same things in 1955. They said the same things with the Montgomery boycott. And Diane Nash, John Lewis, and all these young people jumped into this movement and they changed it. Those freedom riders, those college freshmen, those teenagers, Dr. King, when the National Baptist Convention told them, hey, you can't do this. These young people separated and formed the Progressive Baptist Association, and they made an impact. So when we're questioning the validity of asking, let's say it's just 100 of the top athletes say, we're not going to play in the SEC. We're not going to go to Alabama. We're not going to go to LSU. We're not going to go to Texas University. We're going to go to USC. We're going to go to UCLA. We're going to go to schools in the West, schools in the East. What's going to happen? The same thing that happened with the Montgomery boycott. And that's why it's so important. And that's why we need to understand what's being asked, because young people have always been on the forefront. Yes. I remember George Fisher telling Lewis and I, hey, you young boys, y'all so radical, man. Y'all gonna get all of us killed out here. Y'all gonna, the little progress we have, y'all gonna destroy it. And we said, hey, look, what do we got to lose? We want better. And so asking young people to step up again when history has demonstrated. Look at the film Eye on the Prize. It's an excellent film about the civil rights movement. Look at the people you see on the freedom rides. Look at the people you see boycotting at those counters. Look at the people you see, yes, getting on those buses going to jail. They're not 40-year-olds. They're not 50-year-olds. They're not 60-year-olds. They are young people who are energized, who say, hey, I want something better. Mike, play that second video right quick.
If you think the NAACP's Out of Bounds initiative is crazy, let me introduce you to Kylan Hill. This young man took a courageous stand that changed an entire state. This week, the NAACP asked student athletes to boycott schools in states across the South that are working to dilute black political power through gerrymandering. The idea is that if you mess with these folks' money and the teams they love, they'll think twice about violating our communities. And predictably, some folks are acting like this plan is unrealistic. But history is on the NAACP's side. The year was 2020, and Mississippi State flag still features the Confederate stars and bars. That's crazy. People have been trying to get the flag changed for decades. But at the height of pressure, Kylan Hill, who had just been named the state's best player the year before, he took a stand. He posted this on Twitter: "Either change the flag or I won't be representing the state anymore. I'm tired." It is widely believed that by using his leverage, Kylan Hill had an outsized impact on the state's decision to change the flag. The NAACP isn't asking you to have your skull fractured like 25-year-old John Lewis on the Edmund Pettus Bridge. They aren't asking you to be beaten in jail like Fannie Lou Hamer. They aren't asking for student athletes to have food smashed on their heads or to get stomped out during a desegregation demonstration. They're asking families to use their leverage in a moment where equal protection under the law is fading fast, when the voices of black communities are being erased, in a time where we need more radical action. You're being asked to do what you can, and I don't think that's unreasonable at all.
Now, that's plain, that's clear. He's calling for the Diane Nashes, the John Lewises, the Bob Moses, the Jane Bevels of today. Those people who did the freedom rides, those people who dealt with Freedom Summer, those people who dealt with the Children's Crusade in Birmingham, that shocked the nation. It shocked the nation that these young kids would say, "I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired." And they changed the economics of politics. You see, oftentimes we focus too much on politics. We got to start focusing on the economic of politics. And what the NAACP is saying in its Out of Bounds campaign is that if you touch the economics of these 7 or 8 states where 16 of the SEC schools are, if you touch that $3 billion that impact those universities and those economies, you're going to see these legislators revisit their disposition. You're going to see these governors revisit their disposition. And history has shown us that it works. It's called the politics of economics. The economics of politics. How does economics impact politics? So we're often taught about how politics impact economics, but we're not taught how economics impact politics. I remember Councilman Warren saying down was about the economics of politics, young man. Once you learn that, you're going to be able to get more done. And what the NAACP is saying to us in their Out of Bounds campaign, maybe we should take a page out of history. Because you know what? These changes that are happening in these southern states, they're not an accident. They took a page out of history. They took Plessy versus Ferguson. And you know what happened after Plessy versus Ferguson? First New Orleans and Memphis, those cities integrated separate but equal. And then all of a sudden, all the southern cities implemented separate but equal. Yes. So we should take a page out of our history. And we got to thank the NAACP for doing it because they stepped forward. Mike, play that video you have up there right now.
Act to not play in states where voting rights are being attacked. Here it is.
No one black should be on a playing field of institutions that's living off of our labor, and yet in states that are seeking to reinstitute a sharecropping reality. NAACP this morning, in solidarity with the CBC, we are calling on athletes who are coming out of high school not to attend any state-funded schools of states that have moved to minimize our right to vote, to minimize our ability to elect candidates of our choice, and states that are seeking to create a sharecropping reality.
That's right. Now, here's why.
Black athletes should boycott the SEC. I saw this online, so I felt I had to amplify it. Why? Because you do not get to scream Roll Tide on Saturday and then roll over black communities on Monday. No, you do not get to spend the weekend worshiping black athletes, then spend the work week helping Republicans redraw black people out of power like democracy is arts and crafts for segregationists. You cannot chant, bark, roar, and war eagle your way through the weekend, then come back on Monday with voter suppression pencils and act like nobody notices. Now let's talk money, because that is the part they understand. The SEC distributed more than $1 billion to member schools in 1 year. That is $72.4 million per school. SEC athletic departments generated about $2.6 billion in revenue. SEC football averaged 5.2 million viewers per game last season. Entire towns eat off this machine. Alabama football alone was tied to $138 million in visitor spending in Tuscaloosa. Hotels eat, bars eat, restaurants eat, parking lots eat. Politicians smile in school colors and call it tradition. That is the contradiction. They love black speed, black strength, black touchdowns, black dunks, black relay teams, black bodies making white schools rich. But black voting power, black representation, black districts that stay intact, suddenly they get allergic to democracy. Man, forget all that. Those kids can get that money to an HBCU. They love us in uniform. They just do not love us with leverage.
And it's time. It is time. Colleges are corporations. Colleges are companies. Okay? They have a board. They have interest. Typically, the highest paid faculty member at a state institution, state university, is the football coach because of the revenue that the institution makes due to who? Well, the players in the football program. This is a serious request. Obviously, parents have to be involved in this because we are heavily involved in where our children go to college and how they perceive what college really means. Also, in order for this to work, HBCUs have to step up. It's required. But this is not something that HBCUs have not had to do in the past. The reason why HBCUs exist is because white institutions did not want to respect the black scholar who attended. Okay? While there are many who are calling for black athletes to boycott playing in SEC schools, there is some skeptic sentiment. Jamel Hill is skeptical of sports. Black fans helping the effort. Here it is.
Let's stop there, Mike. Now, the stage is set. The critics, just like they were in 1955, are there. The proponents, just like in 1955, are there. Now, the question is, for you and I, are schools corporations? Do they have a budget? Why is the coach probably the most highest paid faculty person at the university? Because sports matter. Sports has a tremendous impact. So the NAACP's out of bond campaign, if everybody buys into it and participate, just like the young man, Mr. Hill in Mississippi, said, look, he was the #1 athlete in the state. And he was like 17 years old. And he said, I'm not going to play here if this flag remains the same old Confederate flag. And you know what happened? They changed the flag. The legislators passed the bill. The governor signed it. It's quiet. They don't talk about it. But this young man at 17, 18 years old, Mr. Hill, changed a flag that's been around for over 100 years because he said, I'm tired of it. I can't represent the state if this flag represents the state. So young people have always been on the forefront. They've always made the change. So this fallacy of inclusion that people are putting out there, that, hey, should young people that growing up in the ghetto that can get $3 million, should they take it? They should take it, but what if they can't spend it? Yes. What if you can live behind a gated community, but you can't buy a house in a gated community? You know, there was a time in America when even when you had access, you could not go to certain places. You could not move in certain places. You could not stay in certain hotels. And that's key because athletes have always had power. And it's so key. So when we look back at the Montgomery boycott, the question, Kenzie, is the same question. That question during that day was, would Black Americans continue to ride segregated buses? That was the question of that day. And in 2026, the question becomes, will Black athletes continue to fuel multi-billion-dollar sports economies in states that believe that dismantling Black representation and political power is okay? These questions are not identical, but the underlying mechanism is economic participation, economic withdrawal, economic leverage. That is the key. That what determines the difference. And we're going to take a short break because I sort of went off the reservation. And the staff people want me not to go off the reservation and interject certain things into the show. But I had to just give you an ironclad example because I can remember great men, and I love George Fisher. I love Mr. Wallace because they were forerunners. But they became institutionalized. And it was these young 25, 26-year-old young men and women that met at Shiloh Baptist Church and said, hey, we're going to change the economics, the politics, the communication, the media, all these things in Jefferson Parish. And you know what happened? We changed it. And the elders were happy for it in the end. So we're going to take a short break. And I want to be fair with all of this because I don't want to be one-sided here on Talk What You Know. But I think this out-of-bounds initiative should be talked about. And every pastor should be talking about it. That's right. Every business person, every pastor should be talking about it because it's going to take everybody to make it work. See, you can't, the irony is on Saturday, Roll Tide Road. And on Monday, you passing voter suppression laws. You passing redistricting laws. That's crazy. That don't even make good nonsense. To continue to support those economic engines. It's called the economic of politics, and it's time we understand it. We'll be right back after this short commercial break.
Payback is a thing you got to see. Yeah. Never do any damn thing to me. Sold me out.
Bethesda House of Prayer. Bethesda is a church for non-traditional worshipers, a church designed for those who love God's Word. Would you like to attend a church where believers and non-believers can choose to worship together? A church where cultural differences does not get in the way of God's message. We invite you to be our special guest. Our services begin 9 a.m. on Sunday, located at 7601 West Bank Expressway, Suite B, Marrero, Louisiana. For more information, contact us at 504-348-0132.
Listen up. Your customers, our listeners, could be hearing about your business right now. Yeah, right now. Don't miss out on the opportunity to advertise with NewOrleansTalkNetwork.com. Call our business department today at 504-475-4793 to hear about our great rates. NewOrleansTalkNetwork.com. We provide the people, you provide the business.
times of family stress, if you need a church to hold your funeral services or a hall to hold your repast, you can contact us at Bethesda Community Event Center at 504-348-0132. We can accommodate all your repast and funeral needs, from a preacher to perform the services, to an organist that plays the music, the ability to stream it live for those who can't make it, and more. During your time of need, all of your arrangements can be made under one roof here at Bethesda Community Event Center. We're here to serve you. Give us a call when you're in need at 504-348-0132. Give your loved one a great homegoing event. Come second line at our center.
It's your girl, Dejana Nee.
And it's your girl, Nostalgia K. And New Orleans Talk Network is bringing you something brand new. We are Bridging the Gap. This is a place of hope, healing, and transformation.
And our podcast stands on Isaiah 58. We are rebuilding what has been broken and restoring strong foundations, one conversation at a time.
Visit us at NewOrleansTalkNetwork.com.
And you can see clips of us on our Instagram at _the Bridging the Gap podcast.
Sign up there.
You never know, you might be our next guest.
Because we need help bridging the gap.
Okay, don't let us do this thing alone.
Mwah.
Hush now, child, and don't cry. Your folks might understand you.
Welcome back to Talk What You Know, Hard Talk Edition, right here in the New Orleans Talk Network studios. We're talking out of bounds. From bus seats to stadium seats, can economic pressure change America again? That's the question we're pounding this morning. The NAACP's Out of Bounds campaign. And what if people who help fund the system stop participating in it? What would be the impact? We got a classic example. We wrote the book. We wrote the script. The Montgomery boycott changed America. It showed the economic impact. And today, the African American community spends almost $2.8 trillion a year. And what if we bought into the NAACP's Out of Bounds campaign? And it's a good title, Out of Bounds, because what they're doing is out of bounds. Now, you can be the referee and you can call the play, or you can sit on the sidelines. You see, you got the capacity to be the referee. You got the capacity to be able to throw the flag. And the question is, are you willing to do it? And as all the commentaries have said, if just 100 of the top prospects say we're not going to participate in the SEC, these 16 schools that are located in these 8 or 9 states that have made a decision since the Callis case, Louisiana versus Callis, since that case, we are going to redraw maps. They systematically eliminated 9 African American congressional seats. Yes, with a stroke of a pen. They systematically did that. Sound like Plessy versus Ferguson all over again? Don't close your eyes, because it is. Plessy versus Ferguson in 1896, I think it was, the law was passed. But you see, in 1902, you had complete, separate, but equal of the United States. Yes. And it was paramount in the South. These same 8 or 9 states that succeeded from the Union, and I thank God for the wisdom of the people in South Carolina who learned from history. And they decided they were not going to eliminate Representative James Clybourne's seat. Yes. And that was basically because of who he is. But as Representative James Clybourne said, he guarantees after his retirement, they're going to come back and do the same thing they did in those other states that succeeded from the Union. Now, you can be the referee. I'll say that again. If 100 of the top athletes listened and paid attention, because listening and paying attention is very important. If 100 of the top athletes decide that we're not going to participate in the Southeastern Conference, we're going to go to these other universities in the West and the East, we're going to make them powerhouse. You know what's going to happen? The TV revenue is going to switch. Right now, the SEC dominates TV revenue. The SEC has probably won, if memory serves me correct, 5 out of the last 6 national championships. So SEC football drives TV revenues. What if these kids were now playing for UCLA, Iowa, USC, those other states, in those other states? You would see these legislators and these governors have a change of heart because of the economics of politics. And I thank Councilman Butch Ward for teaching me that. And he was a Caucasian. And he said, Donald, you got to understand the economics of politics, because economics truly drive politics. We see politics as driving economics. That's a misnomer. Why do you think lobbyists form political action committees? Why do you think lobbyists get so involved in legislation? Because they're trying to influence the economic of politics. And so the NAACP's Out of Bound campaign is designed to deal with the economics of politics. Now, Mike, put those states up so that people can see them. Because a lot of times we just don't know. And there's nothing wrong with not knowing. Like I told you, I was ignorant to the legislature's change of the law. I was an independent, and I thought I could vote for anybody I want. That's ignorance. It's not that I'm ignorant. I was ignorant of that fact. And so sometimes we are ignorant of certain facts. That don't make us ignorant. We're ignorant of that specific fact. Now, these states, might put it back up. So these states, Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, Tennessee, Texas, Louisiana, these are the states that rule the SEC. Now, just imagine if the economic pressure is put on these universities. Yes, you'll change some hearts, because economics change hearts. Deacon Charles, he always said, Cap, Needmo is the baddest freaking person in the jungle. He said, when Needmo arrives, everybody capitulates. And you know what? He's right. Needmo will make you change your mind. And when these universities need more money, the legislature and the governor is going to change their minds. And that's why this 1955 to 57 Montgomery boycott model can work. If you stop watching SEC football, if you stop buying SEC paraphernalia and merchandise, if we start to encourage our children, our nieces, our nephews, not to participate in SEC sports, I guarantee you in 2 years or less, these legislators will go back to the drawing board and they'll reconstitute these districts. Because, you see, you got to understand, and I'm way off the reservation, so, that's okay. They flagging me, but no, I need to be off the reservation because this is personal. Because it's going to affect my grandchildren. It's going to affect my children. It's going to affect your grandchildren. It's going to affect your children. When these legislators run into Needmo, I guarantee you they're going to change their dispositions. Or the people are going to unelect them and put some people in there that's going to say, hey, we don't need to roll back to Plessy versus Ferguson. I remember watching a documentary on Alabama. That's all right. I'm okay. I'm off the reservation. I'm totally off script. I watched this documentary on Alabama. It was on HBO. When Alabama played USC, Sam the Bam Cunningham destroyed Alabama. All those big, huge greens and cornbread eating young men, Sam the Bam Cunningham ran over them like they were non-existent. And you know what the Alabama alumni said? We got to get us one of them. Yes. And that started the integration of the Southeast. The whipping that Sam the Bam Cunningham from USC put on Alabama opened the door for the Southeastern Conference to start letting a plethora of African-American athletes come. Now, what if we reverse that process and say, you know what? We're going to go back to where it was when USC beat the daylights out of Alabama, beat the daylights out of LSU. As a matter of fact, none of them wanted to play USC after that game. If these kids start to go to those other schools, the money and the TV, see, they get their money from TV advertising. The bulk of their money comes from TV advertising, almost $2 billion. The other billion come from the sale, the stuff we talked about, uniforms, paraphernalia, and all those things. When they start to feel the economics of it, it's going to make a difference. It's called the economic of politics, and they don't teach you about that. They don't teach you about the economics of politics. See, I thank God for allowing me to be inside the belly of the beast. Just like Joseph was inside the belly of the beast in Egypt, I've been inside the belly of the beast. So I understand how they work. I can guarantee you, if we bought into the out of bounds campaign by the NAACP, all they're doing is said that it worked in Montgomery and it can work again. And it's all about young people. Because like I told you earlier, anybody over age 40 is institutionalized. Those people didn't support young Dr. King at 26. They didn't support young John Lewis at 25, Diane Nash, all those young people who were actively involved in the movements that we talked about earlier. No. As a matter of fact, they kicked Dr. King them out of the Baptist National Convention. They had to form the Progressive Baptist Convention. So history teaches us that this can work. Now, I want you to see another clip. Because you say, Donald, Pastor Jones, you're off the reservation. Some of this stuff could be true, some of it cannot be true. But I always like to document stuff. Like I tell people on Sunday, hey, I can stand up in that pulpit and tell you anything. That's why you got to have your Bible open. You got to have your iPad open. I'm not talking about reading text and sending messages. I'm talking about paying attention to the message and paying attention to the show. And focus. I want you to see the significance of young people. And I want someone who was intricately involved. You remember a young guy by the name of Muhammad Ali? See, sometimes you got to go back on the History Channel and these places and look at some film. Ali refused to be inducted into the military. A young Ali. He probably was 24, 25, I can't remember. But something happened that brought unusual support to the young Ali. The number one athletes in the country came together. And they did something that had never been done before. I want you to hear the person who put it together describe it to you. And I want you to hear the person who put it together give credit to where credit was due. And it's coming from the architect who put it together, not from me. That's how you know this out of bounds campaign can wait. Mike, play that tape right quick.
I want to go back for a moment, if we can, to 1967, to that summit meeting in Cleveland where you discussed Ali's decision to refuse induction into the Army. How did that meeting come about?
Well, I was doing a film and Ali was being ostracized for his views, and I came up with a concept of bringing the greatest black athletes together at one summit And I'm going to cut it short by saying I'm sitting here with the guy that was the youngest, who had the most to lose, and who stood like a champion, sat in that front row with us. And people all over the world should know that that was a great act of courage. And I'm so glad to be sitting here with you, Kareem, because
thank you very much, Jim.
You were the baby.
I was proud to be there, though. I wanted to lend my voice.
We stood up, and I think it helped. But at that time, you were risking everything because you were challenging the federal government. And the government did not want us to be able to prevail and have Ali become a legitimate conscientious objector and a Muslim minister. But he was all of that. And I had John Wooten call all of these young men, and they all responded. They did not ask for any transportation, any room and board. They all came, and they all had a lot to lose.
I want to go back for a moment, if we can, to 1967, to that summit meeting in Cleveland.
You heard it from Jim Brown. You heard it directly from the horse's mouth. He organized this Cleveland summit. He put it together. And he acknowledged something that most of us would acknowledge. He said, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was the youngest. He had the most to lose. And he was willing to put it on the line. They were willing to say, if you're going to ostracize Muhammad Ali, we're not going to participate. And Jim Brown brought athletes from all over the country together at that Cleveland summit. And what they're doing in Cleveland now, they're memorializing that spot. So everybody will know the impact that they had, and that impact supported Ali during a difficult time. And you know what happened? The Supreme Court ended up ruling 7-0 that he was right. Because of the support, because of that economic summit, because of people coming together. So the Montgomery boycott gave us the paradigm. It showed us that it's not so much about the older people who are never going to buy into this type of movement because they feel they have too much to lose. They're institutionalized. Yes, 30 years ago I wasn't institutionalized. 30 years ago I was willing to work 16 hours a day. I said, Judge Fisher, although I love you and respect you, you brought me into this. The way y'all are doing it, it's not going to benefit long term. And we changed the economics of the politics of Jefferson Parish. So and look, I told you we met at Sadler Avenue. It was a group of young guys, business people. Yes. And my frat brother don't like me to say this now, but we formed Bloom, Business Leaders Organizing on the Move. And we had 10 spheres of influence that we were going to impact. And it would not be consistent with what Judge Fisher, Mr. Wallace, Reverend Colton Lewis, all of these guys wanted to do. It was inconsistent because they thought we were crazy. They thought we were going to set them back. But inviting young people to take the model of the Montgomery boycott, what the NAACP is asking to do, is not now. It's unique. And it can and it will make a difference if we buy into it. Mike, play a few minutes of that Joy Reid tape with Congressman Jeffers right quick.
Moment featuring an unprecedented attack on black political representation, and therefore it requires an unprecedented response.
That's right.
We are here standing in solidarity with the NAACP and its call for athletes to boycott institutions within the SEC that belong to states that have unleashed these Jim Crow-like racially oppressive tactics, which is unacceptable, unconscionable, and un-American. And we believe that the silence of these institutions is complicity. That's right. And we will not stand for it.
And Hakeem Jeffries was responding to a call from the NAACP to boycott, to have the parents of great athletes, young Black athletes who are high school seniors and rising seniors, boycott and do not accept admission to SEC schools, to punish the right-wing Dixiecrat Southern Republican-run states that are eviscerating the Voting Rights Act and gerrymandering Black elected leaders out of power. The NAACP has labeled their plan out of bounds. And joining me now to discuss it is Derek Johnson. He serves as the 19th president and CEO of the NAACP, a role that he has held since October of 2017. Derek Johnson, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having this important discussion.
So talk to me about out of bounds. What are you calling for parents to do?
So when you consider the flagship schools of the former Confederate states, those schools drive the economy for those states. They take pride in the schools, whether it's Texas A&M all the way across to University of Florida. It is important for parents, as their children are considering their options, to recognize the fact that their kids should not be creating profits for the universities when those universities and the states will prevent those same young people from being prepared and participating in the public policy decision making. Sharecropping is over, and we believe that when a child has an option, they should exercise their option and leave the Southeast region.
So let me give you some of the pushback that I've just heard in the world. I won't even play the soundbite I have, Jason. We can forget the soundbite. But people who say, these young, let's say a young basketball player or a young football player, they've dreamed their whole life growing up. They really, really, really want to play professional ball. And the best way to do that is to get into the best possible athletic program in college. They get recruited by an SEC school. There's a lot of money on the table. Now there's a potential that, they can make a lot of money even while they're in college, potentially, and make their way to the pros. Why should they say no? And if they say no, who's going to help the family economically if they can't?
But nothing we're talking about is saying no. We're saying exercise your option to go somewhere else. If you have an offer from Alabama, University of Georgia, surely you also have offers from UCLA, University of Michigan, and any number of Big Ten schools. And oftentimes is a more attractive option. Many parents would select an SEC so they can be closer to their child. And we're saying in this moment, it's time for us as a community to stand up. We want every family to make the right decision for their family and their economic standing. But we know that if you're a top recruit, you have more than just one option. You probably have up to 15 different options of schools all across the country, particularly a conference like the Big Ten.
What about a parent who's got a student who maybe doesn't have lots and lots of offers, and the choices they have, like let's say they're in the state of Alabama or they're in Mississippi, are an SEC school or like Jackson State? Is there enough support financially for those programs at an HBCU? And are you encouraging people to maybe stay in the South if they can go to an HBCU?
Oh, absolutely. The exercising your option is, if you have an economic opportunity and you have an option outside of the flagship schools of the targeted states, you should exercise that. You should make this one of your considerations. All of the high-performing athletes that I have been in contact with, they are spending all summer visiting campuses across the country. And we're just saying, and when you line up all the factors, this should be a factor you should consider. Now, some students, some parents would ultimately decide to go to a school that's on the list, and that's okay. But at the same time, we're saying really consider, do you want your child to go to a place where they're not seen, their history is not respected, and their voice is muted because the state simply don't want them to participate in the policy making process or deciding who policymakers should be? Sharecropping is over. I say that over and over. Making profits on the field should not be the main driver. You should also want to create a whole person, and your child should be seen as a whole person.
Yeah, indeed. D.L. Hewley was on the show and, launched this idea with us. And he said the same thing. He's like, you're not going to be respected in a state that won't let you vote. You couldn't even vote if you were there. So let's say you register and you're living there. They're like, yeah, you can't vote here. You're in Texas, Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana. We don't respect you. You drive off the campus. You're a target for the police in an incarcerative state like Louisiana. It's clear that these Southern governors who are sort of cosplaying as old Dixiecrat governors, they don't have a great deal of love for Black people or for Black people's rights. And so it is a good question. Why are Black folks, why are Black athletes enriching these coaches, these schools, pumping money into these states that really don't have an economy? I mean, other than these SEC programs, like what is the economy of some of these states? Like they're depending. Alabama needs their SEC money. And if we take it from them, what are they going to do? You have a part in your program that's for parents, but you also have one for fans. What do you want fans to, what pledge do you want them to take?
But we should stop buying the paraphernalia. Let's stop going to the games. If you in Mississippi, go to the Jackson State or Alcorn game. If you are in Alabama, Alabama State have a great football team. If you are in Louisiana, Southern Baton Rouge or Grambling, they need the support. Let's support the institutions that have sustained and supported us. And let's stop going to the store, buying the paraphernalia for these schools. And you're correct. Many of these states are dependent on the sports programs for their economy. Every school on the list generate north of $100 million annually from their sports program. That's on the back of African-American kids who are on the field, making up over 70% of the talent on the field or on the basketball court, men and women basketball court. So we truly should reconsider how we leverage our collective power so that our rights will not be taken. And when those states are seeking to take our rights, we should take our dollars away.
And Derek, I would take it further. I mean, I don't understand why any D9 organization is having conventions in Orlando. I would be willing to give up as much as I love New Orleans. Why are we going to these red states and giving them convention money? Why are our big organizations like the NAACP and others, when y'all are having your conventions, there are beautiful places to do these in blue states. Why are we not rewarding them? And I would love to see it broaden out. I think it is time to treat these southern states like South Africa. They want to be like South Africa. They want to take a large section of their population and disenfranchise them. If that's what you want to do, we'll just treat you like old South Africa. Should we broaden this out, not just to the SEC, but really to treating all these states the way they're treating us?
Well, this is the first step. We should be looking at, this recent announcement about the Super Bowl going to Nashville in 2030. This is an opportunity for many of us to begin.
All right, so now you've heard it from the president of the NAACP, what the goal and objectives are. You see, this out of bounds initiative will break the backbone of the SEC, and it's called the economic of politics. This is the question. Why have power if you're afraid to use it? And this economics of politics initiative out of bounds can work because we saw it in the Montgomery Bus Boycott. We saw the economic impact. We saw it in Tyler Hill's disposition on that Confederate flag in Mississippi. Now, perhaps the most important question is not whether the boycott will succeed. No, that's not the most important question. The most important question is whether Americans still believe economic leverage can change public policy. Because that is what the Montgomery boycott proved. And that is what the out of bounds is testing. Not whether football matters, not whether recruiting matters, but whether economic power remains in the tools of a democratic system. Now, it's not about bus seats this time. It's about stadium seats. It's not about fare boxes. It's about $1 billion athletic departments that the schools need. the principle remains remarkably familiar. If the system profits from your participation while diminishing your power, economic withdrawal becomes a civil rights weapon. The question is not whether America has seen this before. No. The question is whether America is about to see it again. This has been Talk With You, Hard Talk Edition. And I'm Reverend Dr. Donald R. Jones. And I encourage you to stay informed, stay vigilant, and remember this, and it's so important. Power is not measured simply by the votes you cast. Sometimes it's measured by the dollars you refuse to spend. And this has been Talk What You Know, Hard Talk Edition. But we've looked at, can economic pressure still change America? That's so key and so important. And remember, in America, if you want to count, you got to pay your taxes and vote. Look forward to being with you next time on Talk What You Know, Hard Talk Edition, right here in New Orleans Talk Network Studios.
Because the revolution will not be televised. The revolution will not be televised. The revolution will not be brought to you by Xerox in 4 parts without commercial interruptions. The revolution will not show you pictures of Nixon blowing a bugle and leading a charge by John Mitchell, General Abrams, and Spyro Agnew to eat hog maws confiscated from a Harlem sanctuary. The revolution will not be televised.
Step Construction is here for you with a brand new offer. We now provide affordable storage sheds. Stop wasting your money on overpriced storage units and portable containers. Step Construction can provide you with a custom shed that will fit your budget and storage needs. So contact Step Construction today at 504-340-5809